flying through the air, and the groans of the rich sure was sad. But it was God's own mighty plan. He is judging this old land, north and south, east and west can be seen. He killed rich and poor.
Ah, so lovely that you came.
My name is Angela Raval. I'm a journalist at the Financial Times. My 16 years at the newspaper, I've been a business reporter. But at the start of 2021, like so many in my profession, that past year I started writing about how COVID was ravaging the world around us. I was particularly struck by how little I seemed to be reading in the mainstream press about the place where I'd grown up, and that is here in Newham. The stories of my family and friends in the area and neighbouring boroughs seemed a world away from the experience of those I was speaking to in my professional life. Those who worked in the city, lived in wealthier parts of London and other major cities, those who were able to work from home, and effectively those that could shield from the worst impacts of the pandemic. So I set out to report on what was happening in the so-called COVID triangle. And this was when I first got in touch with Jason. As a former director of public health in Newham, with a career focused on tackling poverty and inequality, he was the expert I spoke to at that moment in time, as I reported out a magazine feature and tried to make sense of that time. It was then that Jason told me, early on, it was all, we're in this together, and the virus doesn't discriminate. But then it emerged that it did. Certain populations, he said, were not only more likely to become infected and suffer the worst impacts from the virus, but also the adverse impacts of trying to control the pandemic and the economic consequences. When I read Jason's book, Same Storm, Different Boats, which you should all buy, everything I felt at the time came flooding back. His account of that time during the pandemic, which tells the story of how he and so many others navigated such a turbulent time and an unprecedented public health crisis. It's not just about the facts and figures, but about the people and the communities that faced COVID head on. I was so much better informed after I spoke with Jason back then, when I was 4 months pregnant with my first baby. And today, as I'm 4 months pregnant with my second baby, I'm delighted to be here sharing a platform with Jason today to have this discussion about the book, which is a testament to his hard work, his expertise, and how much love he has for this community. So, Jason, why don't I hand over to you for a few minutes before I ask my questions.
Okay, thanks so much, Angeli. And it's really overwhelming. It's amazing to see you all here from every part of my life, friends and family, many people who I travelled this journey in Newham with. It's wonderful to see you here. Others who were going through the same experience in other parts of London, people I worked with, new colleagues, so many people who are part of this story in different ways. So it's really amazing, and I'm hugely grateful and I'm moved that you're all here for this evening. I thought I would, before we're going to go into a conversation, and then actually we're going to be joined by another couple of people who Angeli will introduce in a bit, but I thought I'd start by just reading something from the book, by way of start. And the book, when you read it, it goes through the story of COVID chronologically, but each chapter picks up a theme. So I'm just going to read something from early on. Chapter 4, The Arrival, January 31st, 2020. It feels painfully naive now. After my first minuted meeting about the 2019 nCoV Wuhan novel coronavirus at our local borough, Newham Borough Resilience Forum, I wrote the first of what would be hundreds of briefings to Newham's mayor, other local politicians and senior leaders. The briefing says, 2 patients in England have tested positive for coronavirus. They are both well, and specialist measures are in place to prevent the spread of the infection. Looking back, it was not that the threat was not being taken seriously. It was just that the arrival of COVID coincided with what felt like much bigger news. Indeed, my above note went out on the same day that Brexit happened. Going to skip forward a little bit we're going to skip through February. March the 13th, so about 6 weeks later, our first confirmed case in Newham. A week earlier, I'd met a much more experienced colleague from another borough for coffee. How serious was this thing we deliberated? We still weren't sure. How did it compare to the swine flu outbreak we'd been through 10 years previously? The number of cases had been steadily rising for a couple of weeks. At first, directors of public health would receive a call from Public Health England, at the time the arm's-length government body responsible for infectious disease control. And that call to say they had a positive case in their area and they must place appropriate infection control measures. Every day, I waited. Surely it couldn't be too long before I got a call. Newham is normally first in the line for health challenges, often for all the socially determined reasons discussed earlier. We sit at the wrong end of health league tables, from immunisation rates to diabetes prevalence. However, with the local population far less likely to have been to Europe to enjoy alpine ski resorts over half-term, we would wait a bit longer. I couldn't quite believe that every day we seemed to dodge the bullet, as colleagues around London were being called into crisis meetings. In turn, I was starting to understand what was happening, but only at a tentative basic level. I still had no comprehension of the scale of what was unfolding. But I started to tell colleagues and our local politicians to assume COVID was in the borough and that it was a question of when, not if, it would be confirmed. I think I'll pause there.
Maybe I should start by just asking, why did you want to write the book? And was it a sort of cathartic process?
The first word on my page, Anjali, is catharsis.
We didn't plan this entirely.
So, a few things. So, one was absolutely catharsis. So I started writing most of the book about 3 years ago as we were starting to come out of COVID, and I just wanted to get it out. And so over, about 6 months, when I had a bit of energy early in the morning or late at night, it would and a lot of it just kind of flooded out of me. It was just, I just wanted to get it out of my system, and it did. And kind of irrespective of whether this was ever going to turn into a published book, it just did feel really good to write it. But there were other reasons too, and I did want it to turn into a book ideally. So one was, not long after we kind of wound down from the pandemic, some new people, younger people started joining our public health team who hadn't necessarily worked in COVID. And I had that thought that what's the present reality and deep, meaningful reality for us quite quickly becomes history. That wasn't part of their shared history when they joined the team. And I thought we'd done something really extraordinary, not just ourselves in Newham, but all around the country. Public health teams had done an extraordinary thing, and I thought that was a story that needed to be told, because people are going to quickly follow behind us who didn't have that shared experience. Then I thought there were a couple of really specific things that I felt a lot during the pandemic, and I wanted to be part of the story. So you touched on it in your introduction. Inequality, those of us who work in health and public health in this room think about health inequalities a lot, the different health experiences of people from different backgrounds. But it's quite an esoteric subject. It rarely makes the headlines, rarely connects with most people. But for this one moment, we saw in real time the way in which health inequalities impact people's experiences. So you mentioned many examples, the nature of the work that people do, the housing experience they have, those who have access to a car, the opportunities that children with different backgrounds have to do home learning. We all went through COVID, every single one of us, right? And we all had personal, and for some of us, personal and professional experiences. So I could see every day that all of the challenges that everyone experienced, but all the mitigations we had at home to deal with those. We went out early and got screens for everyone, so everyone could do home working. And I knew that there were children in Newham who were sharing one phone amongst 5 people to do their working from home. So that inequality, which played out in so many ways, leading to ultimately to different death rates, but also different lived experiences for people. But on the other side, I also experienced so profoundly, and it's here in the room in such an alive way, community and the amazing ability of people to come together to combat shared challenges. And it felt like that was a story I really wanted to tell as well. So really, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it. So that was it. It was the catharsis. It was the need to tell this story, this amazing thing we all went through, to share those insights about inequality, but also the amazing work we did collectively as a place, not as a council or as an NHS, but as a place.
And why launch here?
I had to do it in Newham. Like, I can't, what I just said to you, right? It just wouldn't have made sense. If they'd had me in Foyles in Tottenham Court Road, it wouldn't have made sense, right? We had to come here because this is a story about place, and it's a story about community, and this town hall Stratford Town Hall is, a core place in our Newham community, and it's so lovely that there's a lot of Newham residents here this evening. A lot of our champions are here in the audience this evening, and that's so important to me.
Most people here won't have read the book, they've probably just grabbed a copy today. Give us the highlights reel. What are there any particular chapters to reflect on? Anything in particular that you would sort of single out?
I mean, every bit of the book is stories I wanted to tell, but I will touch on a couple. As we came out of the first wave of COVID, so people may remember that the first wave hit London first. So London really bore the brunt of the first bit of the first wave. And as a result, and the tables in the book, when the Office of National Statistics first published the mortality rates coming out of the first wave, it was quite early still, so it didn't really cover the whole country, and Newham were at the top of that list. We had the highest standardised mortality rate, the highest death rate anywhere in the country at that point, which was some point in May, so it was pretty early. But that's not a list you want to be top of as a Director of Public Health, and I remember deeply and I can feel it now, that sinking feeling of trying to come to terms with, I'm the Director of Public Health for this place, and my job, I go to work every day to try and support the health and well-being of this population, and we've been through this profoundly traumatic experience, and we've got the worst rates in the country. And that was, I think it was a Friday, and over the weekend, I did something a bit unusual, and I contacted our Mayor, Roxana. I'm not sure if Roxana's here, and Chief Executive at the time, Althea. I've definitely seen Althea. And I said, can we just have a chat? And we chatted over that weekend, and we shared our feelings and shared our response to that place in that table that you never want to be. And we collectively said, we don't know how long this thing is going to go on for. We don't know, this was long before there was any sense of a vaccine in sight. We don't know how long this thing is going to go on for, but can we collectively resolve that we're going to have agency in this, so we're going to do everything in our capabilities to protect the community going forward, and if that means being really creative and thoughtful and doing some different things than are going on in other places that don't have all of the same challenges that we have, we're going to push the boat out. So that's one moment, and then I'll pick another one, which is much later on, and it's during the vaccine program, and there's some photos in the book, and there's a photo of this one, which is the vaccine program, and vaccinating Newham was an extraordinary experience. I learned more in that period than I've ever learned in my career. But there was one point, well, there's a few points that stand out, but one I'll refer to, which is the first weekend that we vaccinated young adults, so 18 to 30-year-olds. And there'd been a lot of stuff in the press about vaccine hesitancy, both related to age and young people, and also ethnicity and different ethnic groups that are more vaccine hesitant. And this was a story that was being told all the time, and it's not that there aren't important things in that story to be told, but this was the narrative. And that first weekend, we were vaccinating in East Ham Leisure Centre. And we said, we're going to give a real go for this, and we're going to try and make it a really special weekend and get lots of people there. But we didn't really know how it would land. And it was the weekend was an absolute scorcher. And on the Saturday morning, I cycled down didn't have any particular responsibilities, just to see how it was going. And as I approached East Ham Leisure Centre, I just saw this extraordinary queue that just snaked round and round in every possible crevice of queuing it was possible to queue. There were young 18 to 30-year-olds from every possible background, because Newham has people from every background, all queuing patiently in the absolute boiling hot weather. I'd wanted there to be like music and fun stuff, and all we managed, was some gazebos and water. But everyone waited. People waited for more than 3 hours for their vaccine in just a spirit of patience, collaboration, and the vaccinators told me that not a single person complained about the wait, that every single one was just absolutely grateful that people had taken the weekend to vaccinate them and protect them. So those are 2 moments.
One of the things that we spoke about back when we spoke for the magazine piece was that there was a concern that all these things that were being made visible, all the vulnerabilities of this borough and others that COVID had exposed, once we kind of got out of all of this, everyone would soon forget about it. And if I talk to people about COVID today, there is a sense of we've moved on from that. We don't want to talk about that. Maybe it was so difficult for a lot of people, but this idea that we have so much to learn and we've got all this stuff that we remember and these are the good things that came out of COVID don't seem to be highlighted in the same way. I mean, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, are we sort of back to hiding from it all again?
So a couple of years before I came to Newham, I'd worked on the Grenfell recovery from the Grenfell Tower fire disaster, and there's a couple of colleagues from that time here. And I remember a language around that time really deeply, which was kind of Grenfell changes everything. And I remember thinking, will it really? And, if we look back, it's changed, some things about building regulations for sure, and safety. But the inequality dimension, the things that people said at the time, that people would never think about people in social housing in the same way again, and that it would change how as a country we grappled with inequality. The world moved on. And I think, there are a lot of people in this room, but it's a select audience who are still trying to fight the good fight of keeping alive the lessons of COVID. But I think you're absolutely right. In the wider public narrative, in the wider discourse, the world has moved on. And that moment when health inequalities was really, for a very short moment, captured people's imagination as an injustice that needs grappling with, we did move on. And I think it's not just the wider public. I think, like I say, there are people here still trying to fight that good fight, but I don't think our institutions of government, of the NHS are, there are so many challenges, and towards the end of the book, one of the later chapters is called Permacrisis, because we never had time to stop after COVID and say, okay, let's do a lessons learned, right? There's the inquiry going on, but that's not going to be about I don't think that's going to be about some of these deeper issues of inequality ultimately. We never had a moment to stop, because long before COVID was officially over, Russia had invaded Ukraine, we had a cost of living crisis, we had a refugee crisis, we had a homelessness crisis, all of these things compounded. And so even the people working in this space struggled to have a moment to say, actually, how do we really embed all of the learning that we've had from this moment? So, like I say, it's not that there aren't people who are trying, and some of them are in this room, but I think there's an awful lot more that we can do. In
an ideal world, if we had to say, these this is how sort of what we learned back then. This is how it's relevant to the moment that we're in now. If we had to kind of give 5 points there or 3 points, what would you highlight? Like, what do you want people to really take away and remember?
I think there are two things I will touch on. One is kind of specific to health inequalities, and one is broader. On the health inequalities point, it's that those of us who are involved in policy making, make policy for a country as a whole, but everywhere is different. And we saw during COVID how if we want to make changes, if we want to do positive things in places, there needs to be that relationship between the way those in central government make policy and those closer to the ground understand context, and that relationship between the central and local, if we're really going to meet people's needs in a far better way than we are right doing. There's so many parts of our system that could work better. And a big part of that to me is, do they understand, are they being delivered in a way which is relevant to the context in which they're taking place? Or are they a cookie cutter approach, which is one size fits all? So that would be one. And the other one I've thought about more recently, although I think the community story was always profoundly important to me. You know, we are in a moment of, you know, significant social fracture. It's a very, very, very difficult time in our country, as is in lots of parts of the world, and there are huge pressures pulling people in different directions. But it wasn't that long ago, was it, that people came together in a spirit of amazing solidarity, and there were 4,500 mutual aid groups around the country, and there were people volunteering with hundreds of thousands of people volunteering, and there were people making major disruption in their lives, not to benefit themselves, but to benefit the wider community in terms of stopping the spread of this virus. That was only a few years ago. So what can we do in this moment of intense sense of social fracture to remember that just recently we came together? And that potential, if it was alive there, even in the most extraordinary circumstances of a pandemic, if it could be done then, surely we can find the ingredients to do it again now.
I think this is a really good time to bring on Kevin and Katie. Kevin Fenton is the London Regional Director for Public Health, and Katie Blake, a long-standing council volunteer and community campaigner who was a COVID-19 champion. So if I could invite both onto the stage now. Kevin and Katie, if I could turn to you both in turn, you know, really for any particular reflections on the book, on what Jason has said, and just your thoughts about what we've been through and where we are now. Katie, if I can start with you.
Well, first of all, I'll say good evening to everyone. And from my perspective, reading the book, it brought back a lot of memories, good memories. I got to know a bit more about you as well, Jason. And as a COVID champion, it was very, very moving to hear the way that you said that you appreciated what we do. Now, Newham is a very diverse borough, as we all know, a very young borough, and some of the challenges that we came across were so enormous that sometimes we sat together on our usual Tuesday evening Zoom calls. Zoom, who knew about Zoom? I knew there was a song called Zoom, and that was it. We all had to learn how to use Zoom, and that's when my daughters came in handy. But the vocabulary that we used, the changes in the words, the changes in the methodology of doing things, all just changed. And to have Jason there as a guiding figure for us all, to be honest, it was incredible, because to start off with, it was, what can we do? We can't do this, we can't do that. And after a few Zoom calls, I think Jason realised that can't wasn't really a word that we liked to use. And some of the formal things that we've always done, we had to tear up the rule books because the situation was so strange to us all, so new to us all, and it impacted on everyone. And I'm pretty sure if I said, can you stand up if COVID had an impact, everyone would be standing up because, you know, I speak to people and they say, no, it didn't really happen that much, whatever, but we were all queuing to get toilet paper. We were all queuing to get hand sanitizers. So the difference that it made to all of us was incredible. And to have Jason behind us, in front of us as well at times, it was incredible.
So good evening, everybody, as well. And Jason, thank you for having me here and to share this moment with you. Congratulations on a fantastic book as well. I have to say, I'm sure like many of us, we were reading the book to see when is my name going first? What page am I on? Or what pages am I on? It's a beautiful book, but it's a difficult book. It's a difficult book. And I don't think we've had time, even 5 years later, to process the enormity of what we've been through. And for many of us, we don't yet have the words to express the pain, the hurt, the uncertainty, the loss. The community, the camaraderie, the friendships, the pressure, the loss of sleep, the anxiety, the being shouted at by ministers, the being congratulated by ministers, the ups and downs of the experiences that we had. And your book made a fabulous attempt to describe it. Because if I was to tell anybody what we truly went through, they wouldn't believe it. They wouldn't believe the hours that we spent, leading in uncertainty, working with communities, being shouted at by people who wanted certainty in an environment where there was none. We wanted to provide advice, the best advice that we could as professionals, and we couldn't, because we were waiting on data or evidence, or there was a lie that said, actually, this is the message for today, and we need you to transmit that. So your book provided space for that, and for me to process that, and for that I say thank you. I also have to say, you wrote the book as a consummate public health professional, so I love that. My favorite parts of the book were the beginning when you sort of set the scene, and you talk about Newham and the demography and the people in Newham. And then you talk about the epidemic, and the epidemic curve is there. And I'm like, damn, if I wrote this book, this is what it would look like. So well done.
Thank you.
And thank you on behalf of everybody here for creating a space for us to process what we've been through. We need more of these spaces. We have the COVID inquiry, but a book, a poem, a song can help us to get through this. So thank you.
You've each in your own way spoken about how, you know, you all broke barriers to sort of do things for the first time, you know, just to get things done, to move one step forward, to get people around a message, to get them to take action. How do each of you think about this now and taking action in 2025 and beyond? You know, how imaginative can we be? You know, those kinds of lessons, can we still reach for those tactics now in public health, in community building? How do you think about that?
We must. I mean, we've got to. I think the lesson for those of us who work in a space of trying to in whatever way make the world a better place, need to talk and listen and work together with people who come from different perspectives and sit in different places and see the world differently and have different lived experiences. And I think it's got to show us that it's the end of a kind of paternalist view of the world in which there are people in, the offices of Newham Council or the offices of the NHS who always know best. They have perspectives, they have really important, meaningful professional knowledge and professional experiences and their own lived experience as well. But that only tells part of the story. And I think what we learned is, and you, Katie, you articulated it beautifully, is by breaking down those old ways of working and talking, we worked out how to navigate these challenges. And COVID was a specific one, but the challenges that all of us in who are trying to make the world a better place are grappling with are all complex, and they all require that kind of way of working, that kind of deep collaboration, that kind of taking on multiple perspectives. And even if they're uncomfortable, we have to go, going back to the challenges that we're facing as a country right now, we can't resolve some of the issues if we're not prepared to go to some places that may be uncomfortable. And we said during those vaccine conversations, we said, with public health, we're pretty keen on vaccines, but there's no bad questions. There's never judgment, right? Everyone thing that everyone's bringing to the table is legitimate, and we need to grapple with that.
No, I agree with what you're saying, and something that we had to learn really quickly was to listen. And not just to listen to ourselves who are on the calls, but to listen to the community. And if we don't listen to the community, this bottom-up way of doing things, it's going to be so hard to prepare ourselves for the next crisis. Not saying the next pandemic or whatever, but the next major crisis. Are we actually ready for it? Now, the COVID inquiry is looking into some aspects, but are they actually listening to the people? Are they coming out to talk to people? Are we learning any lessons? And on the news you hear people say lessons learned and whatever, but we've really got to be in a position where whatever we hear, we act on. We analyse it and we work out, can we do something? Can we make a difference? And the COVID champions were a one-off. We really were. We were a mixed bunch of people, and we all had different perspectives of what was going on in our life, in our communities, in our churches, in our mosques. And if we don't listen, then how are we going to move forward? And my perspective is that we have listened, we've made a lot of changes, and some of these changes are permanent. I mean, the COVID Champions programme was spread all over. There was a youngster called Christian. He was age 9. He was a COVID champion. He used to sit next to his dad on a Tuesday or sometimes on a Thursday, depending on if he had homework, and he would listen, and he put together a quiz. And this quiz went to Jamaica, and someone in Jamaica, my nephew in Jamaica, got a little certificate because he took part in the quiz. And that's the effect that you can get by having everyone involved, not just the same usual people, not just the people that are getting paid to do a job, the volunteers, the nurses, the doctors. I remember us all banging pots and pans for them, and there's a bit in your book about that. Yeah. And you said it lasted 10 weeks. I can remember banging it for ages, but and that was to acknowledge the health service. But then, what about the fire service? What about the road sweeper? What about the teacher? So we've really got to make sure that whatever we do, when we listen to people, then it's spread right across the community. So.
So I had the privilege of meeting the COVID champions on a couple of occasions, if not more, because you'd always invite me back, which was a good sign. So I have to believe that we can change things. I must believe that change starts with me. And by virtue of the experience that we've been through, I may not be able to change government policy, who the health minister is, who's investing where, but with the position I have, with the resources I have, I can make decisions to do things differently. In the summer of 2021, I think I was interviewed by The Guardian, and I remember the quote that they used for the lead was, "We must be honest. We have got to be honest." And the article was saying that in order for us to break through barriers, to achieve a different outcome, not only do we need to do things differently, but we need to be honest about the factors which are driving the epidemic, and we have to put our resources to the places that can help to address those. There were many things we didn't want to speak about in the pandemic. We didn't want to speak about structural racism. The report that I did to government was one of the first government reports which named structural racism as a driver for the risk of acquiring COVID, of dying from COVID, and we explained why and how structural racism operated. We didn't want to speak about inequalities initially, but over time we did. And coming out of that experience with the pandemic and the lessons that I've learned from working with Jason and many other directors of public health, the key principles of how I practice my public health today are fundamentally different to where they were in 2021. There is no improving health without tackling health inequalities. COVID taught us that. There is no tackling racial and ethnic health inequalities without tackling structural racism. If you're not willing to have those tough conversations about structural racism, discrimination, homophobia, sexism, then you're not yet ready to make the real changes that are required to achieve different outcomes. And then finally, I've said that because of our shared experiences, when we know better, we must do better. And that starts with each of us.
Can we talk next of trust? This is something that I thought about a lot during the pandemic and in the years after. You know, we went through a period of time where, particularly somebody that works in the world of newspapers, there was a huge question over what was right, what was wrong, what was truth, what was false. And I remember people, and it kind of spread through everything. I remember people saying at the time, "Oh, isn't it so selfish that people are not isolating? Isn't it so selfish that people are acting in one way or the other?" And there was a lot of judgment. There didn't seem to be much recognition that actually, if certain people didn't go out and do a delivery job or go out and, if they didn't sort of not isolate, they wouldn't be able to earn a livelihood, right? What people's own truth was and their own sort of value system in that time, it was very different for different people in different communities. How do you all think about trust, given what we've been through, and now at a time when, as Jason said earlier, there are a lot of sort of community relations being tested again, and how we can maybe foster a sense of togetherness given, everything we've been talking about?
A couple of reflections. So I talked earlier about that I'd had the experience of working in the aftermath of the Grenfell Tower fire disaster, and that experience made me think an awful lot about trust because I was working in an environment with the ultimate breakdown of trust between state and community. I learned at that time a Dutch proverb which has really stuck with me, and there's someone in the audience who's Dutch, they can tell us all in Dutch afterwards, but it's that trust arrives on foot and leaves on horseback. And it really stayed with me, and I thought about it a lot when I came into this job and when we started our work with communities in the pandemic. And the thing I thought a lot about, reflecting back on that Grenfell experience, is as a leader, being able to say, I don't know. I think, Kevin, you kind of touched on this. I don't know. It's the leading, being honest, having a humility, being able to say, I know you want an answer, but I don't know. And I think that, for me, that's such an important part of building a trust-based, being a trusted leader, is having the confidence to be able to say that and say, I will tell you everything I know, and I will be honest about what I don't. And it particularly happened through the vaccine journey, where we started the workshops together before any of us knew very much at all. And we said, we will share with you everything we know as you know it, and try and explain it and get the best people here to try and make sense of it for you. But when we don't know, we will say we don't know. And I think that was powerful. I think that was really powerful for our relationship and building that trusted relationship. So that's one that I just want to touch on.
Just to follow on from what Jason was talking about, as COVID champions, we didn't know anything about COVID, the terminology, the technical, all the different jargons. We had to work out what was what. And I can remember when the Kent variant came through, and a lot of people had their vaccination and things were going better than before. And then this thing came out of the blue, and I remember us having a Zoom call, and us champions were saying, well, what is this thing? I thought you said that the vaccine that we had before, that would help, and now we've got something else. And are we going to need a new set of vaccines, or we're going to have the whole program again? Can you just tell us? Because people are starting to get worried. And I wanted an answer on that evening. I wanted the answer there and then. And I can remember Professor Fenton and Dr. Winston said, we don't know. And I was like, you lot should be know. You know. How can you not know? You're the ones that should know. We're coming to you. You should know. And they said, we don't know, but we're going to find out. And when we find out, we're going to come back and tell you. And for a few moments, there was a lot of to and fro, and then we decided, well, if you don't know, then we don't know, so we've got to wait for you. But when they came back with the information, and we got it broken down, so that we could then take that message out to the community, the trust that came back from the community was enormous. The trust that came back from us to our leaders, as I would call them, was exceptional, because they had the humility to say, we don't know. And that just went so far. And to start off with, we didn't know you, we didn't trust you, we didn't, who are you? Yeah? But as we built up throughout the weeks and months, and years, to be honest, the mutual respect and trust was there. And that's the thing, it has to be mutual, and it has to be genuine, and the information that we get, so that we can pass it on, has to be honest, and that happens.
There's something about saying I don't know, which is not only honest and humble, but it's human. And in that place of vulnerability, that's where connection takes place. And we needed a lot of that connection during the pandemic. Trust was a big deal in the pandemic. One of my enduring memories, and I have many, many stories. I should do a storybook. So I did a town hall. I spoke to thousands of people over the 2-year period. Town hall event after town hall event. The government report that we wrote on inequalities in COVID We interviewed 4,000 people over a 6-week period, listening to stories, listening how people had lost relatives, the impact that COVID was having on them, why they were being left behind. But the town hall that stayed with me was one I did in Westminster. And I was talking about the vaccine and why people should get vaccinated, and giving the data, telling people about the impacts of the vaccine, safety profile, etc., and taking questions. And towards the end of the session, this wonderful, elegant, older Jamaican man called Jim said to me, "Prof, you sound like a good man, but I have never seen you before. And here you are coming to talk to me to take a vaccine that I do not know anything about. I will take this vaccine, but you have to promise me one thing. I want you to come back to us another time and talk to us about the things that matter to me and my community. The fact that so many of us are dying from high blood pressure. The fact that many of us are getting our cancers diagnosed late. The fact that we cannot get jobs in my community. Where have you been, Prof? Where will you be?" That was the most powerful moment, and it happened early enough in the pandemic that it taught me that each of these town hall events that I had was a moment to build trust. Now, some of you who know me know that I speak in parables of 3s and 5s, and I have a 3 now. Because there's a formula that we use to explain trust. That trust is a function of truth, consistency, and time. You need to have those 3 things operating in order to build trust. And if any of those 3 things go, as you say, the trust gallops out. Over time, people have added on different things to that, but it still is the sentence 3. You know, truth, consistency, and time. And it matters because as we're coming out of the pandemic, and people are searching for answers, and people are wanting their challenges met, we need to think about, are we being truthful? Are we being consistent? And are we doing that over time? That's how trust is built.
Thank you so much for all of your thoughts. I think now would be a good time to hand back over to Jason for a final reading.
Well, I was going to read that bit about the young people's vaccine, but actually I kind of read it. So what I'm going to do rather is just share a few words of the champions. So this is just randomly picked from the books, and some of the quotes from champions. We did an evaluation of the programme. The Champions programme gives us the opportunity to contribute to our community, leaving us with a sense of self-worth and purpose during this difficult and isolating time. Being part of the COVID Champions experience has empowered me in incredible ways. It's enabled me to become the go-to person around COVID. I've been able to get my questions answered quickly and promptly without judgment being made. It's also allowed me to share community concerns, particularly those affecting ethnic minority communities, and not feel embarrassed by voicing such concerns. I know the COVID-19 Champions Group has saved lives, even if it saved one life, by encouraging someone to take the vaccine, by encouraging an elderly member of the community to self-isolate, by giving out numbers where help can be obtained for accommodation. Lives have been saved. No matter what the social status, hand on my heart, I say, help was there.
I'm conscious of the time, so I just really wanted to say thank you to Jason, to Katie and Kevin, and for an engaging discussion, and to all of you here for being part of this book launch. So thank you so much.
Before I send you back for a few more drinks and smokers, I just wanted to say a few more words. Firstly, huge thanks to you, Angeline. Huge thanks to a lot of people who have really helped make this evening possible. So, well, huge thanks to James, the publisher, for taking a chance on a book like this, to my wonderful friends, former colleagues who are also friends, the folks from the town hall, Ricky who's doing the sound, everyone who's helped to make this evening really so amazing, so very special. So huge thanks to you all. And one shameless ask to all of you here. So huge thanks to those who've come, to you all for coming. Please read the book. Please share your thoughts with me. But if you like it, if you think there's something that's worth other people reading, please talk about it. Please, word of mouth, put something on social media. It's not easy getting the word out. So yeah, please do share your thoughts on the book and help to spread the word. If you think it's a word worth spreading, I'd be hugely grateful. So thank you to everyone here.